Welcome, data enthusiasts. My name is Joseph. I'm co-founder of Zuma Recruitment. We are the consultancy focused 100% on data tech professionals in and around the Berlin region. And this is our podcast, Data for Good, connecting you with all things data. Today, we have Vitor Louzada. Vitor is Data Science Manager at Delivery Hero FinTech. Welcome, Vitor. How are you? How's it going today?
Hi, Joseph. Thanks a lot for having me. It is a pleasure to be here and talk to your audience. I hope we have a fun conversation.
I
for
do
us
too.
And for them.
Yeah, cool. This kind of conversation would be helpful for me because we've done considerable recruitment in this area. So it'd be good to know if we've been going in the right direction or not. So without further ado, today I understand that you'd like to talk about data science for fraud fighting or fraud detection.
Yes, that's correct. I think the fraudsters do share a lot of information among themselves. So I think we that are on the other side of fraud fighting, we should share information as well.
That's a great way of looking at it, and speaks to the idea of the Data for Good podcast as well, about sharing across the community. To give us a bit of context, what's your background then, particularly in the FinTech department of Delivery Hero?
I'm originally a mathematician, a PhD in physics, and then I've been doing data science now for the past 7 years. The last 1 year and a half here at Delivery Hero, where I'm in the payments processing area. We call it FinTech. And in payments, we also handle the fraud detection. So it's the real-time fraud models when you place your order. Whenever a user for Delivery Hero, and that's more or less in 70 countries with card payments, cash payments, sometimes wallet payments like Apple Pay, Google Pay. When they place an order, we have to evaluate in real time if that transaction seems legit or not, and then do some action on top of that. And as you can imagine, as a user, you really don't want to have your food waiting, so it has to be very, very real time in order to have a concise decision. Yeah.
So there's a balance you have to do there, satisfying the customers and the real customers, and serving the business's needs and protecting the business from fraud, and that's within the payments division. Awesome. Okay, so generally speaking, to start with, high level, how is fraud fighting done in data science? How is it approached?
Well, as any data science problem, we look at past historical information, so previous fraud transactions that we have that has been claimed to us by the users, or in case of card transactions, by the original owner of the card. So we go through the historical data, check what are the transactions that were then that we accepted but were actually fraudulent, and that becomes, in rough terms, a classification model where frauds are the ones, regular transactions the zeros, and then you build a model to predict that. But then the devil's in the details, and in this case, it's fraud, so it's really a lot of details. It's a lot of not that many fraud that we usually receive, so it becomes like a very rare event or like an anomaly that we have to detect. It's not something very common. So the techniques and the way you evaluate the model change a bit from some regular classification problems you have to focus more on some business metrics or some very specific crafted statistical measures for rare events. So it's a bit like regular data science, but completely different, let's say.
That's helpful. And it's also more challenging because you're dealing with rare occurrences. and not only rare occurrences, but occurrences that would be masked, that would be hidden. So yeah, I recognize it's a great challenge. So
And
yeah, tell me
not
about.
only, yeah, oh, sorry for interrupting you. But not only that, but the fact that there is an agent on the other side that knows that you are doing this and is trying to fight against you. So it becomes a game. We can learn through their patterns, whatever they did as a fraudster to operate. So easy things like time of the day, number of transactions. They might think that, okay, a bunch of small value transactions will go unnoticed, so we do like that. And then you build a model on top of these features. Then they change their behavior and do something different. And then we have to change again our model. So it becomes a really a catch and mouse game here, where we are always trying to be at each other's step and try to think ahead what they will do to in order to build a better model on our side.
Interesting game theory approach to things.
Yeah. Of course, when you go to the limit, then you went into reinforcement learning, which then you check at some real-time changes for something that is happening. This is more useful when you have a real-time surge, an attack. Someone finds a backdoor and tries to place thousands of transactions at the same time for us, and then you can learn on this quickly. But on our business, usually it's something like, okay, they found a dump of credit card numbers on the deep web, and they try to use those credit card numbers all over a month or two, very slowly, and then they start ramping up to see if we didn't catch that early. So it is more a slow process, but it has to be constant. You have to evaluate constantly to see what is happening.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm familiar, not so much as a victim, but the idea of fraudsters maybe taking 50 cents at a time, and they'll do it every day or even every few hours, so it becomes less noticeable. In this kind of game of cat and mouse that you refer to, what are the most common types of fraud that a delivery or food delivery business encounters?
Certainly, it is common for fraudsters to think of resellable items. So things that they get as an item and then they resell somewhere. So they're not paying for that, so they get in bulk and sell it. And it's interesting that sometimes it's things like fashion in some countries, in some areas. So a certain item becomes more frequent in a certain country, and we also operate groceries in most countries. So sometimes like some type of alcohol or I think diapers. We also had a problem with that. That is a high value, relatively small, and it comes as a surge in a certain place, and then all associated with fraud. And so it's either one person or really the fraudsters talk to each other, and then they say, okay, this is working. And then we started noticing that it's not common that the same item on all countries at the same time. It would pick on one and then pick on the other and pick on the other. So it was interesting to use this information as actually predictive. Okay, so this item has been deemed risky in a certain country. Probably it will be risky in the others in the future as well. So this massive global scale of delivery hero, we can start learning from one country and applying the others. It's super cool to work on that.
Yeah, I'd imagine it would be, with patterns arising from different countries, and then, as you say, leading on to other countries in turn. I'm curious to know, so you've given us an indication as to maybe some of the products that might be fraudulently acquired, but what are some of the common approaches that fraudsters would take?
So I think the most common one is the fake credit card. So this usually comes from another company that had a leakage of credit card numbers. So they keep their credit card theirs, and due to some unsafe procedure, this got leaked somewhere. Usually it appears as a CSV file in the deep web there. And then someone buys it, this huge database, it's like millions of rows sometimes, and they test all over the world to see if this would work. And they probably would start with us because we would accept small transactions. It doesn't look very bad for them.
Yeah.
And
Or
maybe the
noticeable.
original owner of the credit card wouldn't notice, right? Like it's just a few dollars from one place to the other. So they then build a bot that places orders, like they would have these farms of cell phones automatically placing orders and testing all the credit cards to see if we accept. So they can either use us as a hot test. So they test, okay, if it approves here, probably the credit card is still valid. And then they proceed to do all the fraud with that credit card. Or they are actually going straight for us and doing fraud on us. So that I think is the one of the biggest problems that we have in the world right now. So online payments fraud. Cash fraud, when you actually pay by cash, when it's delivered to you, it's a bit more tricky. We actually don't know exactly how they are benefiting on this. It can be some cases that the restaurant did something and then they mess up the order, that they don't deliver, or maybe someone creates a fake order and gets the food and refuses to pay. Then cash fraud is much more complicated. There are many reasons of why it could happen. Credit card, I think, is more simple, and then consequently, you see that credit card machine learning models are much easier to build than cash fraud.
Interesting. So let's get into that then. Let's get into the ML and data science area. You've given us the real world instances and methods. What are some of the problems and emergencies that you as a data science leader might face?
Okay, I think the biggest problem is that you have to be fast during model building. That you cannot look into much historical data. As I said, fraud patterns change, and you have to change your approach frequently. So you have to enter in this mood that you are always developing a new model or thinking of an improvement, deploying, testing, and coming back and trying again, and sometimes thinking about the next version while you are deploying current and debugging the previous. So it's all happening at the same time. And of course, the more you automate this process, the easier. But of course, you always have to be on top of latest research, latest business insights to get into what actually brings value. So this becomes a bit more stressful than regular data science work, right?
Yeah. So the first thing you mentioned there, it sounded quite reactive. So must be fast in model building, in deployment testing and trying it out. How much of it is being reactive compared to that whole research side, being ahead of the game, keeping up with emerging trends in prevention rather than attack?
I think every market has an answer to that. I think when we have cases where fraud level is uncomfortable in a certain place, then you are reactive. Then you actually have to build something fast to solve for that. When you manage to control, then you actually free your mind, free your time to think about the improvements. So we are actually at different stages, at different places. So then, of course, the more you think about it for a certain country, which is more controlled in this way, you have a better time the other one when it goes out of this crisis mode. So I would say that nowadays we are more starting to go into a less reactive and a more proactive approach than when I started 1.5 years ago.
Good. Okay. So is that something that you've introduced, or is it the maturity of the team?
It is a maturity of the team. I think with time we have become even more specialized. Like we have a machine learning engineer team to take care of everything online. We have much more straight relationships with the operational teams of fraud in all our countries of operation. And then we can easily collect their latest business insights and the latest technology to actually deploy it. So by separating it a bit, we became a bit faster, and this has been proven. Unfortunately, it's a very slow and gradual process over the year. It's not, there is no magic formula.
No.
And I wish there was at least a book where we could have read it and how to implement. We just had to discover how to arrange all the pieces along the way.
But it also strikes me that having that network, that real-time communication network, an international network, sharing ideas, sharing insights, sharing some of the problems and emergencies that you've all encountered helps you to advance. What are some of the strategies that your team might adopt for model and feature building in fraud prevention?
I think it's the most important one for feature building is this close interaction with business. Usually any fraud setup, this business or operations, they are the first ones that notice the problem. And they have this human insight, right? They get access to all the data from a customer, from a restaurant, and they can find these very tiny patterns that we can use. And it's interesting when you talk to them, you see the years of experience accumulating, and they say, okay, this transaction with this value at this time of the night and ordering this food in this country, yeah, this doesn't look good. It's probably fraud. And they are very good at creating this high precision machine. So it's something that certainly is taking fraudsters, but it's not taking all fraudsters. So it's a high precision, low recall, say that. Especially it's good to that. But this gives us very nice insights. And what we do sometimes is take human-based insight that is saying, okay, having 5 transactions in the past 1 hour looks suspicious, and we just test all options. Okay, what about 6 transactions in 1 hour? What about 10 in 1 hour? What about 5 transactions in 2 days? Then you just check all of this, and scientifically you can find the best one and find all the alternatives. But the initial side still came from the human. And moving forward, I think that's a very good interaction between the power of the 2 approaches, right? You have the human specialist that knows a lot about the business, knows a lot about the fraud patterns, and sometimes even talking to customers to understand what happened. And then the machine is trying to generalize and actually take care of the bulk of the problem for them.
It always seems to come back to, of all the data conversations that we have, technical or otherwise, it always seems to come back to the human element. That seems to be the differentiating factor, and it's really positive to see, as well as the evolution and innovation of AI, the human elements. Vitor, you had mentioned to me that you have 3 strategies for data science in fraud. whether they be general or specific. Could you go into those for us?
Yeah, maybe just to highlight, like it's more or less a mantra that we have in the team. So you build your model fast. So that means you go from drawing board into production as quick as possible. Especially when you're entering in a new market, a new country, or a new payment method, something that we never did before. So you should not wait for the perfect model. Just go fast and build something fast. And of course, to build a model fast, you need to build your features fast. So you need to understand with business what is important for that particular fraud. And you have to be able to iterate and generalize, explode the problem, create a lot of stuff for your machine to learn on top. And once you are moving so fast, you cannot be afraid of making mistakes. And as you can imagine, I have made many mistakes in my data science career, and it's okay. I mean, we have deployed, and it can be as stupid as you can imagine, like deploying the wrong version of a model, deploying something in an A/B test setup that is clearly completely not protecting against fraud. Something that you see in hindsight, oh my God, how could I have done this? And I think we cannot be afraid of that. Cannot be afraid of making simple or complicated mistakes. You go ahead and see, you monitor, of course. And most importantly, you learn with this mistake. You build better governance, better tools, and ultimately you build better models on top of your mistakes, which meant more fraud transactions, and then you build a better model and then you are better in the end. Yeah.
People, when it comes to criminality and money, I should imagine that data professionals get a little bit anxious and a little bit nervous because it's highly critical. I mean, the data professionals are just like anybody else, right? They're humans with this sense of pressure. And what you're suggesting is have this fearless mindset, fail fast, try things, try model building, no matter how stupid it might seem. And with that, you'll learn from it, and that will help you to inform governance and standards in the future. I like this. I respect it a lot.
Of course, you can only enter that rhythm once you have a complete buy-in from your partners that are actually taking care of the business. That trust in your methods, in your team, that's something that you build carefully and slowly also. They will see the numbers there. They will have to explain the fraud numbers afterwards, right? So it's very important that we are hand in hand on this as well, so that then we can move this fast.
Trust built slowly. That's a careful balance, isn't it? If you're trying to build models fast and get them into production fast, even if they might be erroneous, building trust is it's a challenge.
Yes, completely it is. Yeah, what we have tried to do since the beginning was to always talk more their language in the sense of financial impact of a model. I think as a classical data science training, we are looking at AUC, F1 score, precision recall, as I said here. But ultimately, business is more interested in exactly, okay, how much fraud in terms of in euros are we preventing? And also, how much are we bothering our customers? So that if we make a mistake on blocking a pretty legitimate customer, they are actually getting angry with us. And then they leave the platform, they take their business elsewhere else, and we lose those transactions in the future. So how do we balance that? So this becomes an optimization problem for us. So if you can assign numbers to this, and you know how much money you lose on each fraud, and you know what is the long-term impact of false positive, you put both of them and you start reporting what they prefer to see. So it's what is the monetary impact of this model, and to take things to the next step, you can input this function into your model training, and you're actually training for and calibrating your model for a better financial impact of its decisions, not only F1 or you see something more statistical.
Interesting. So that strategy, would you say, be super mindful of the financial impact of what you're building, but also balance the customer experience with the business need?
Yes, correctly. I think it's, I don't know if you had the opportunity of traveling abroad and then trying to use a certain app and it doesn't work with a credit card. This happens to me many times traveling to different countries. Like you order some ride railing app in some country with your card. Yeah, and it doesn't work. That's probably false positive, right? You are a foreign card and a new user. It pretty much looks like a fraudster, but it's not. So how do you balance that? So it can be a fraudster, it can be a good user. You don't want.
Yeah, the consumer then gets frustrated with that experience. Certain credit cards are not used in. I think of credit cards, and certain credit cards are not as widely acceptable in certain countries. So I might not use that brand of credit card. I might not be their customer, so they are losing me, and I will go to another provider. Okay, so it has a huge potential financial impact. Okay, and your next strategy?
Well, I think what I would say is that you cannot be afraid of going beyond your role. I think data science, it cannot be only you build the model. Sometimes you have not only to go talk more with business, but you also need to talk more with the engineers to see, okay, can I actually reply fast enough with this very complicated like GBM thingy that I built here? Is this making the SLAs of our platform so that we don't hang our process too much? So it starts becoming a language that I also don't know much. So going to software engineer, but I cannot not have this conversation. So I have to have at the same time meetings with software engineers to understand the platform and understand the technical limitations of this. Then meetings with business to understand the financial impact of this part. Maybe with data engineers to understand the whole data platform, which I actually use to build the models. So you go all the time in every possible direction. And we try to have this idea here in our data science team that you should not be afraid to go beyond your role. Just think about what you can, what you need to do to finish your task, to finish your project, to finish your model, and go do it. So don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Sometimes you have to learn more of software engineer. Sometimes you have to learn more about business, and that's just the reality. Of course, I totally not an advocate of the full stack data scientist. Maybe you as a recruiter know much more than I do. Sometimes there's requests from companies like, I want a data scientist that goes end to end. He can deploy a model. He can do statistical analysis and everything.
So, sometimes it depends on the size of the company. Sometimes it depends on the criticality of the service or product. Sometimes it depends on the capability of the team. So there are varying factors as to what companies need. But I should imagine in an area as critical as fraud detection, no, having generalists is not the priority. Interesting. Okay, so go beyond your role. That's what I caught from that. Don't be hesitant to get involved in areas that perhaps you're not as familiar with, be it the business commercial side or the software engineering side. Okay. So is there a strong element of collaboration there, learning from each other?
Yes. Collaboration, communication also, which I think is just one aspect of collaboration. And I think even each technical role has a different way of interacting. Some people might prefer PowerPoint show, others might prefer a big thread on Slack. Others are by email, others by having a call with someone, and I think it is very common that you have these different approaches, and well, you need to adapt. You need to be able to have a useful conversation with all your stakeholders, be there then on the technical part or then the business part, and adapt to their language. As a data scientist, we are the latest addition in the corporate world, right? So they were all here before us. We are trying to enter into a machine that usually works quite well. We are trying to put something new there. So we are in this. I would say that as a data scientist, you have to be this new person in the area that tries to understand the others and speak their language and add value to their approaches.
Speaking of adding value, in fraud detection, you're not making the business money. So I wonder how you really can show value or bottom line financial impact to the business from the data science and the models that you are building. How, whether you want to go into specifics of your own team and your own business, or generally speaking, how would a data science professional in the fraud detection domain get to show their positive financial impact?
At the very first step, it's actually easy because you go online with your strategy, your model, and you actually don't do anything about it. Just score. Just put the score there and track. And then in a month or two, you see that, okay, I would have blocked this. And then that's an extrapolation of what you did. But that only works in the first 1 or 2 months, because if you are successful, you actually go into production. And then you don't know anymore, right? You are actually blocking. And what is that thing that you block it? After that there are some strategies, and I cannot tell you specifically which one we use, because actually we use all of them depending on the context. I think the most common one is sort of A/B testing with a control group. So you select some transactions to not apply your model, let them go. And for those, you see what your model would have said. So you score, but you don't act on top of that. That's a simple control group. Other things that we can do as well is to actually follow a certain user after we block it. Then, if they disappear out of our platform, it basically means 2 things. Either they were very angry with us because they were honest, and we blocked the transaction, they got hungry and tried our competitor, or it was a fraudster that gave up as well. So if you have these 2 sets, at least you have a more narrow approach of what is happening here. And of course, if the user comes back and places then a legitimate order, maybe with a different payment method, then you say, okay, yeah, that was a good guy. We blocked them. So you can start making this small, let's say, plays around what is happening to get in a broad level of what is your impact to the company. However, things get a bit complicated also if you think in the game part, is that if the fraudsters know that you don't have a fraud setup, then they will invest on doing fraud on you. So having us is like a defense mechanism for them even thinking about it.
It's preventative.
It is. By having it, it prevents them from even trying. And that's what I mean by having a more shared communication among the fraud fighting professionals, because actually, if the whole system gets better at fraud prevention, the whole fraud business doesn't make sense anymore. It's just too hard everywhere, and they just wouldn't try more. So if we, at the same time, so if every company improve their fraud systems, it's better for us as well. We also have less fraudsters in the world. So yeah, we would certainly need more collaboration than what we have right now.
Is there a big data science or data fraud prevention community or network in Berlin? Because I think across Europe and across Berlin, there's great competition in the financial payments domain. So there must be strong financial and payments fraud prevention teams. Is there a network that you reach out to locally?
No, not that I heard of. I think we share more into the data science aspect in general, modeling and machine learning engineer, but not specific for fraud. That's a great idea for the future here.
Vitor, you could be spearheading this for the Berlin data community. More homework
I
for you.
speak this language.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay,
I barely speak any English or German, so no.
Oh, come on.
Let's see in the future.
No, it's very strong. The Data for Good podcast. Final thoughts for data scientists for this huge payments and fintech industry that we have in Berlin and Germany. For those people wanting to join the data science field for fraud prevention, what kind of advice or at least final offerings might you provide to the data science community?
I think it's don't get afraid of learning new stuff. I think almost everyone in my team was not doing fraud prevention before joined here as a data scientist. Yeah, they came from different backgrounds, different parts of financial industry, but not in particular for fraud. And because it's very hard to find someone actually worked with fraud models before.
What areas of data science, be it fintech or otherwise, lend themselves well to fraud prevention? Like if a data scientist wants to crack the fraud prevention market, what can they be doing now, or what areas can they be investing their time in?
Well, in terms of business areas, we get a lot of people from credit scoring. I think it's a different way of thinking of a different part of the business, right? So a default, a credit default, it's not really a fraudster, but it is a human being that you're trying to model there. So it's, the mindset is similar. And in terms of techniques, I think it's more on the you have to be heavy on structured data and tabular data in general. Yeah, we don't use much deep learning on fraud prevention. So I think for that it's a bit of waste of time. At least I'm not saying it's impossible. We're just saying that there is a lot to do before you enter into deep learning and very, very complicated things. So if I'm starting as a data scientist or trying to move into fraud detection, I would go more for anomaly detection techniques, classification problems, and also this challenge of the real-time model. What is the how complicated you can get, what are the best libraries that would do for that. How do you calculate features in real time? So all these things, if the more you know about it, I think the better it would impress a hiring manager.
Okay, anomaly detections, classification models, and real-time investigation and research.
Yeah.
Invest your time in those areas. Awesome. Vitor, we've gone on for way longer than I had expected. So thanks so much for sharing all that information. There's been loads of little snippets we can take from that for people coming into data science, fraud prevention, people at fraud prevention leadership level, and the data science community generally. So thanks so much for sharing all of that today.
And happy to talk with your listeners if they want to just grab a coffee if they are in Berlin, or talk more about fraud prevention in general. I think we are all for that here. And thank you so much for the opportunity, Joseph. That was amazing.
Oh, awesome. You're very, very welcome. And thanks for offering your time to the community as well. And yeah, I would encourage anyone who has questions or comments to let us know over the various social platforms. And we will see you all next week. Thanks, Vitor. Bye for now.